billions of people around the world face water shortages.
Cape Town, it could become the first major city in the world to run out of water.
Cape Town, South Africa is inching closer now to day zero.
Just 92 days away from having to shut off most water taps because of a severe drought.
And people struggling with access to water are expected to increase. Cities like Mexico City and Bogota are rationing water, literally turning off the taps of people living there. We're not even close to solving that crisis. By 2030, global freshwater demand will exceed supply by 40%. And when you hear about the water crisis, you probably think about drought, about scarcity. But here's the thing, in my research on a company that deals with water on a daily basis, I stumbled upon a fact that really changed the whole way I think about freshwater and where the biggest lever may lie on how to tackle that problem. For that, let's look at where all the fresh water actually goes to. I mean, if you look at a picture of the Earth, it's blue. It feels like there's just so much water. The Earth looks blue from space, but the part of the blue that is fresh water really isn't that big. 70% of all fresh water on Earth goes to agriculture, 70%. And of that enormous share, only 40% actually reaches the plant. This means 42% of all fresh water is lost in the ground. This brings us to a counterintuitive suggestion. The biggest problem in farming actually is not drought. It's the exact opposite. Farms are missing out on their crops and their profits because they're using too much water, not too little. This counterintuitive insight is exactly where a small software company from Australia figured they can actually do something with that. Let's look at what they figured out. I want to look at this through three lenses. The first one is why farmers actually overwater. The second, what value is unlocked by actually solving that part. The third is how an Australian software company is tackling the problem, and then how can we actually apply this to investing and to business. Disclaimer, I am compensated for this video, not by the company itself, but in connection with the MK Investment Conference. I think you should still know that. So the first one is, why do farmers actually overwater if it literally destroys their crops? To understand the reason behind that, we have to look at the stakes of the farmers. What is their reasoning? To figure this out, I talked to Tim Hyde, who's a farmer himself, and he's actually the founder of a software company who is tackling that problem. Here's the decision process that Tim decided that he also went through as a farmer himself.
You've got a crop and it's worth $20,000 a hectare, and there's a heat wave coming in, and they think, well, I don't want to risk my crop, so I'm going to put a little bit more on. And a lot of it gets back to exactly that. It's just loss aversion. It's just thinking, well, if I don't want to risk losing my crop.
So it's not that farmers are being stupid. For them, it's actually the rational move. But don't they have the data for making the best decision possible? It turns out they actually have it.
We've had in-field sensors since the 70s, soil moisture probes and all sorts of things, flow meters and plant-based sensors. But when you've got to interpret the data, it's hard.
So the problem isn't data. It's about turning data into a decision, a single number. How much water should I put on the field? Because you're unsure, there's a range that you think could be right. And as a farmer, you don't want to risk anything, so you go to the higher edge of the range. Some farmers know how to read the data better, some worse. So the range is different for each of them. The scientific name for this phenomenon is called noise. On the other hand, the average, by which the farmers as a whole deviate from the perfect dose of water, is their bias. Those terms were popularized by my all-time favorite psychologist, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. His research suggests that reducing noise has the same effect as reducing bias. And I also looked at what does it mean for investment processes or for your own business that you're running. But back to that later. For now, let's figure out what can we actually unlock if we can get farmers to get rid of their noise or reduce their noise in the decision-making process. Reducing the noise means reducing the uncertainty range of the decision. And when we can reduce the uncertainty range, the decision on how much water should I use, gets way closer to the perfect watering conditions. Less water wasted, but more importantly, big increase in crop output, direct profits. So how can we increase our confidence on how much water should we exactly use for watering our plants? Daniel Kahneman gives a simple but effective solution. Set up a decision system, a repeatable process on how to reach your conclusion. And this already has been proven very effectively in agriculture. 3 years ago, Google's AI grew better tomatoes than specialized hydroponic software. That's exactly the foundation for Swan Systems. They use AI and take away the decision-making process from the farmers and just give them the final decision that they can implement. Here's how it looks and feels like for the farmers themselves. The farmers get a dashboard where all their data aggregates in one place. The system even accounts for expected rainfall. The heart of it is how much water is at the plant's roots, a so-called soil moisture balance model.
And that soil moisture balance model is like a tank. It's how full that profile is, and it's just about balancing that tank at the right position to give the plant maximum opportunity to grow. You want to put it in a lounge chair and sit it down and take it drinks. That's the equivalent in a human.
And most importantly, they take away all that uncertainty through their decision-making system that is proven. And the farmers just know, okay, that is actually the best decision that you can come up with all the data that they have access to.
But when you've got to interpret the data, it's hard. But so what we're doing is we're interpreting that data and giving the grower exactly what they need to do for the coming week.
And here's the beautiful part, what the farmer actually sees. A simple sheet that tells them exactly how much to water and when. No more guesswork and overwatering.
Look what the data's saying, look what your instrumentation's saying, and they don't need to water. They don't water, but without that sort of background and that underpinning sort of operational system, they'll put a little bit more water on. And when you do that, even 4 or 5 times a year, that's where you get your 10, 20, 30% water savings. Often we'll see, yield increases of, or a return on investment increase for the farmer of sort of 30, 40 times our cost. So, we can increase their profitability per hectare by 20 to 40%. But most of it comes through production and better quality.
An increase in profitability by 20 to 40%. That sounds too good to be true, almost at least. But if you understand the reasoning behind it, it kind of makes sense. I really liked the explanation and the analogy that Tim gave me. He compared the whole thing with a sponge.
If you keep tipping water on top of the sponge and water comes out the bottom of the sponge, if you relate it to that, then basically the fertilizer's in the water. So when you keep tipping on water, you're pushing the fertilizers beyond the reach of the root system, and often into waterways and aquifers, and that's actually what causes the pollution around the world. There's lots of phosphates and nitrogen around the world, and generally it comes from over irrigating. So not only are you wasting the resource, you're actually not getting uptake by the plant, so then your crop suffers.
And this is the key insight. It's not just about saving water. Overwatering actually destroys actively profits. And the sponge analogy really made it click for me. You're literally drowning money through the roots of the plants. The obvious question is, so why hasn't anybody thought about this before or solved this? And people have solved this before. There's a lot of software out there, but nothing of that is really connected. And this is where Swan comes in, because the solutions that are out there, in the end, you have all the data, but for each data point you get a different software, so you still have to make that decision by yourself. And that is where it gets hard, because you're looking at that dashboard, this dashboard, but then you still got noise in here because you don't have a system on how to combine all of it. And this is exactly where big value proposition comes from, that we reduce the noise in the decision making by getting all the data in just one place and in 5 different places. The answer is there's systems out there. People have worked a lot on that, but they all come with strings attached. They all want you to buy their hardware. And that means in the end, you also get their dashboard. And with that, you have like 5 different systems. You end up with 5 different dashboards. So you look at that dashboard and this dashboard and that dashboard. So you still haven't solved the decision-making process. So you're gonna have noise in your process here because like you don't have a clear process on how to go about that. This is exactly where the value proposition comes in, that you have all that data in one place through a proper decision-making process.
We're so unique because we've got these 150 data sort of collectors, and we're the only ones in the industry that are hardware agnostic, so that we can go to any farmer in the world, doesn't matter what he's got, and we can provide a software solution for them. So a lot of it is product.
The best software doesn't help if it's not profitable. So let's look at the financials of Swan and how they're positioned to take over that market.
So there's 750 million acres of irrigated land in the world. When you nail it down to, when you sort of work it down to what our sort of service obtainable market is, it's about 134 million between in the countries we work in, that have got automation, in the crops we work in where we can add most value. So, and that's what we're focusing on.
To target that market, they're running a SaaS, a software as a service model. And as with every business, if the customers don't churn, if they stay with you, then you can really compound your growth story.
Our churn's about 5%. So yeah, basically it's average 20 years. So it's for a company that's only really been commercial for 5 years, it's sort of heading in the right direction. Our gross margin's running at 50% now, but it'll be 70 to 75% the next 2 years. And that is, as we get more efficient in the system, we're doing some back-end stuff to make that customer success part less. So we allocate 20% of our revenue to customer success, but it runs at about 13 to 15. So we've got attractive gross margins. As a business, we're carrying the overheads of the development team. There's 8 in the development team now, and that's that hump you've got to get over where our revenue needs to get to sort of $3 to $5 million.
If you're hearing all those big numbers from the AI startups, that really sounds doable. But there is one thing we have to keep in mind. You remember the story how the AI was better at growing food than the specialized software, but there was still lots of human action involved. So that just told the humans on what to do. And this friction is exactly what Swan is also working on.
Once you overlay some AI and make that functionality easy and push that back in the controller, so the grower literally clicks 2 buttons, then that's where we're heading.
This will bring almost full automation to all farmers. Here's just the one key question, but important. Will farmers actually trust AI to make the decision for them? Because we've seen the financials work, the software works, but the trust factor is the one factor that could make or break this whole thing. But how can we use this in our everyday life? To the ones of us that are not farmers. So I'm not a farmer. I try to look at how can I use the knowledge that we gained from the example in agriculture and adopt that to investing and to business. And here's the key takeaway. Whenever we have decision processes, we should try to bring them into a system. I hope that kind of helped you to think about like where you might be able to apply that for yourself. Maybe take a short break now and think about that. It helped me personally a lot. If you like that and you want to hear more about that, I write on my blog. It's linked below, and please subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more of those kind of like micro frameworks where I'm just looking at the sector, diving deep into what's going there. I'm having tons of fun doing this. I hope it brings to at least some of you guys value. So it just informs your decision-making process on how to do things. Yeah, happy to see you next time. Thanks for watching.